Alright guys, HyDra here, and today I hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. And after reminiscing about the legendary World War II OpTic team, Octane is not so happy about the words that Crimsix said towards his ability on the AR role during his stint on OpTic during that title. He reckons that Crim is completely delusional to suggest that he would have been better than either Octane or methods if he'd have used an AR during that game. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. This I thought was pretty funny, looking at COD players and their respective professional athlete counterparts. Lots of these were coming out of the NBA. There was this one which I thought was interesting to say the least, trying to compare Scrappy here and Zlatan Ibrahimovic, but there were a few from the NBA, and the funny thing is to me that I don't really know any of these players, so I can only base my opinion of, I think this is Tristan Thompson, right? I can only base my opinion of him on my opinion of Zinni, so I don't know whether that's good or bad. People that actually know this found this pretty funny. Kat was replying, because of course TJ comes out with what I imagine is a bit of a roast here for Zin. Cap says this, you know, Method is like, what are you laughing at? Zim Thompson, he says, we even got, this was, again, this is Dylan Brooks, right? But I don't really know anything about, maybe you guys can let me know in the comments below what the funny things are about Dylan Brooks' career, why he should be compared to Doug, but people seem to think this is a pretty good comparison. So, as I say, based on my opinion of Doug, I can make an analysis on my opinion of this guy. Or maybe it's the other way around here and it's Doug the one that's taking the dagger in this situation. You know, Doug did win some events back in the day. There was also this from Kismet that I thought was a little bit ambitious, shall we say, looking at this duo, Kiz and HyDra, and comparing them to, of course, I actually do know these two, of course, Jordan and Scottie Pippen, but, so, I don't know, this seems a little bit ambitious, shall we say, and as Clay says, brother, I tipped the champs win, but for real, they started with 1 and got 6, so Kiz reckons that maybe the future is very bright for this duo, and to be fair, they've been really good in 2 titles in a row. They won at the end of the Vanguard season, that kind of, they won the Prime event, right, and then they made the finals of Major 4, and qualified for champs at least in that crazy season, and then this year, without Crimsix, they've done even better, 3 events, including the World Championship dub. Can they keep that up? It's obviously a great partnership that they've got over there, and maybe still slightly underrated, right? You look at some of the other SMG combos, you look at CleanX and Envoy, you look at Simp and aBeZy, you look at Priestahh and Shotzzy, but, you know, HyDra and Kiz have proved to be the go-to guys over the last couple of seasons, and it's not quite the same Simp aBeZy combo, it's more like Scump and Karma in some respects, how they used to operate back in the day, but yeah, still, Kismet seems very confident, shall we say, that they are going to continue to perform well going into the future. There was this from Arsties, he tweeted out this gif, of course, of Illy. We know, I mean, this is still such a funny story behind this one, right, when this is at the Minnesota home series, or Minnesota kind of whatever it was called anyway, the kickoff event of the 2020 season in Minnesota, and Crim said to Illy that it would look straight fire if you put his hood down and like walked out like this, and it's still a pretty iconic moment. But we believe that Arsties and Illy are going to team up again for the new season, but as of recording, Surge still haven't said anything, so you'd imagine it's coming at some point, but maybe Surge are playing the game as the other teams are playing the game of waiting as long as possible to sign their players, so they don't have to pay them already, which is unfortunately what a lot of these organizations are up to. I do wonder as well whether we will start to get some Advanced Warfare 8 action going on, because Simp was playing in them, also Zuma went to play in some of them yesterday as well, and well, he won this game 172 to 170, he dropped 38 in 33, 14 captures. What a beautiful game Advanced Warfare was. Retreat Hardpoint doesn't get too much better than this. And apparently it does play pretty well on PC, so that would be interesting to see. But in this game, Capture the Flag was played. There was Uplink as well, but also Capture the Flag was a game mode, especially here on Retreat. And I just wanted to share what Puckett had to say on CTF during the Black Ops 2 throwback, as in his opinion, he would not bring CTF back. Yes, CTF for like 1% of the time is the best COD you're ever going to watch and see. For 99% of the time, it can be pretty boring. Now, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but anyway, it's interesting to hear the community's perspective on it.
Have we had a lot of 1-0 score lines on this map today?
Well, 1-0s, 2-0s.
2-0s, yeah. I feel like
2-1s, that's the bad part.
I feel like you're usually good for 2.
I mean, calling it crazy, teams comes on the good side and they're up 1-0.
That's what That's what I'm saying.
And for everyone who's saying CTF should come back in the next guy, I highly disagree.
Well, as long as the user interface is very obvious who has the flag. And
what would you like to see as the third game mode?
Oh, That's a great question.
Jetpack
I don't know if we have the solution to that yet, but
Yeah.
I think historically uplink was the best. Does it fit boots on ground? I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's anything but Dom, really. I think that's fine. Anything.
The one thing that I really do like CTF for, to be honest, is that it's easy to understand. For a new player who's never watched COD before, Hardpoint is, you know, a bit tricky to get your head around. Once you get the hang of it, it's great, and it is the best COD watching experience, I think. Search and Destroy is pretty straightforward. There's nothing, you know, crazy to understand there. But Control, for example, is a bit of a weird mode. Even Uplink is pretty easy to understand, right? You throw the ball in the portal, you jump in the portal, it's a basketball, basically. Like, that's easier to understand for a new player. Control is a bit strange. It's like, well, you've got to capture these zones, but also there's lives involved. It's kind of a mix of Hardpoint and Search and Destroy. Sure, it can play well sometimes, and is probably, on average, more exciting to watch than Capture the Flag is. But is it the best? I'm not convinced. CTF, at least, for a brand new player watching it, you know what's going on. I capture that flag, I bring it back to my flag, that's a point. I mean, it just makes sense. So I think that you've got to consider that part of things as well. And if it plays as well as Control does, I think it's worth giving it a go. I still think that the most likely outcome is we play Control, but we know full well the pros have been getting frustrated with that game mode over the last few years and probably want to straight up get rid of it. Now let's talk about this Octane thing, because this I thought was hilarious. During the OpTic Dynasty podcast, Crim was talking about the World War II OpTic team. That legendary roster, of course, when they dropped Karma, they got rid of Formal went to LG, Karma went to sit on the bench for the rest of the year effectively. They brought in Octane, and they tried to get Zuma, they tried to get John, they maybe tried to get Kenny, and they eventually got stuck with Methods, who was not the man they wanted. And therefore, Crim was forced onto running an SMG alongside Scump for the remainder of the season, which is not really where he wanted to be running. But he says that he was actually way better than his 2 ARs on his team, and if he had been using an AR and they had a proper sub, they would have been really, really good. Octane, though, isn't so happy with this assessment.
You in World War II was like me in Black Ops 4. Like, me with an ICR, only not being a solo ICR, you were a solo sub.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I don't really use that as an it's an excuse, but I mean I dropped like
you
a
had
point.
Zen, him, and Sam.
I dropped like a
That
0.6.
sounds horrible.
It was bad.
I mean, I was running.
Wait, who even used the other sub? It had to be you.
It was me.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And I just remember thinking, I'm using a
But
sub.
you're actually good with an AR.
I'm using a sub, but I'm better than both our ARs.
Yeah.
At the time.
He's not gonna like that.
but-
He's gonna be like,
Damn.
No, but I was
Zen-
Nah,
Porter's
My bad,
delusional.
Sam.
That is
My bad,
delusionality,
Sam.
brother.
My bad, brother.
That's pure delusion. Oh my
Yeah,
god.
I mean, they didn't
Sorry,
move.
Sam.
Everyone knew up
Oh,
played those two
shit.
players.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Damn.
So.
Are you pressed or no?
Catching strays out here. Catch, I'm gonna let. I would let it rock.
Relationship with pretty much everyone I've coached. So, who is the most difficult to coach?
Difficult.
Most difficult to coach.
Difficult. Crim.
I think
it's Crim. I think it's Crim.
I can think of somebody.
And he probably knows that too. Like.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's probably the most difficult. But there was so much good in what he was doing, like day to day too. Like, I even told him this, but like, dude, I don't think I've ever had another player give 110% effort every single day. Like, it's hard to do that every single day in practice. You're practicing, 6, maybe sometimes 7 days a week, and there's always going to be, an off day for one player. But that dude was 110% every day, and like, I'll always like respect that from him.
He
for
came
sure.
with that intensity.
Oh, 100%.
So also JP giving his thoughts there on Crim as a player, like saying how difficult he was to coach, but also JP gave some credit in this interview with the Stocksman to Crim for being 110% focused every single day. Like, Crim would turn up and be locked in. Like, whether he was locked in for ill or, for good or for ill, I suppose, that's another debate. But he always put in the effort, so that was interesting to hear. Let's have a look at some of the numbers though. So this was the team, if you guys are new to the scene and unfamiliar with this roster, and if you are new to the scene, you might think, this doesn't make any sense. Octane was an AR, Methods was an AR, Crib was an AR, Scump was, towards the end of his career, would have maybe even been better on a flex role, and we've seen what happens when Scump's on a kind of flex AR role over the last few days. So this team doesn't make any sense. And that is true, and it was true at the time as well. Now, this was arguably, apart from maybe COD Ghosts that Crim was unbelievable at, this I think was Crim's best ever game. He was ridiculously good at this game, and it's a shame for Crim in a way that, you know, because a lot of Crim's titles that he won, he wasn't necessarily the best player on his team during that time. Yes, he was an incredibly important part to why the OpTic Dynasty and the Complexity Dynasty won a lot, but, you know, maybe he was the best player on his team for a quarter, a third of the tournaments, something like that. He was, you know, Scump, Formal, Karma. It's difficult to be the best player on your team, and even on the Complexity Dynasty, it's the same story. However, on this OpTic team, he was the best player on their team during that season, even before the changes, and I think after the changes as well. Crim was really good. If we look at the numbers here, it was an AR-dominated game. The ARs, Methods, Octane are up here as well. Some of these numbers were on OpTic, some of these numbers weren't. And you have to get down, I mean, look, Methods, Slasher, Dashy, Octane, Formal, Assault, Arstes, Dens. You have to get down to Crim to find a player that wasn't on a full-time AR. And even after that, Waskin, Parasite, Rated, Gunless was on a flex. And then you get down to the likes of even Kenny was on a 1.07 on the season on the SMG. And then, you know, Scump's down at a 1.05. So it was difficult to be good on an SMG in that game. And Crim was just really good at this game. His Search and Destroy wasn't quite as much, at a 1.3 over the course of the season, and these were some of the numbers after they made those changes. So after the Dynasty collapsed, they brought in Octane, they brought in Methods. These were the numbers during Stage 2 of that season. And one thing that people kind of forget about this team is that they were actually the best hardpoint team in the game. They were 19-5 in hardpoint during Stage 2. And if they'd have maintained that into champs, they would have been alright. But the issue is their search wasn't great, and their CTF was not really good enough either. So they were 7-7 in CTF during this period, and they were 9-9 in their search and destroys. We can also see some of the numbers here, if I just make sure it's kind of fully on screen enough, that overall, Methods during Stage 2 at a 1.2, Octane at a 1.12, Scump at a 1.1, Crim at a 1.06, and a lot of that was in the hardpoint. Crim was just kind of doing what he needed to do with a 1 flat, and then the ARs were dominating. However, Crim in the search had a 1.2, and he was the better of the, well, he was their second best player by the numbers in the CTF, and maybe their best player when you look at it in terms of the captures. The Crim basically did all of that. So Crim was really good at this game, and if he was on an AR, he would have been dropping, you know, better numbers and would have been up there, I think, with the ARs on his team. Now, does that mean that he was better than Octane? Does that mean that he was better than Methods? Because this was also Methods' best ever game, I think. This was, I mean, Octane's good at every game, but this is one of Octane's great games as well. So, yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think about that from Octane, saying that Crim's delusional for thinking that he was better than either of his ARs? I think that Crim could well have been on their level. Whether he was significantly better than both Zilly or Octane, I don't know about that necessarily, but, you know, because as I say, it was a really good game for Zilly, and Octane is Octane at the end of the day, one of the greatest ARs we've ever seen in COD, but pretty entertaining stuff. And just to close out the video with this from Crone, who has the best and worst gamer tag in competitive COD history? There's a few options that come to mind very quickly. I know that people say, oh, John is terrible. People always used to say Slacked was terrible as well, and I kind of get that because I don't really know what Slacked is. It's difficult to say. It doesn't really make any sense. Obviously, you know, Josiah's now retired and he's doing well for himself. Obviously, Beans now gets thrown into the conversation. Here we go again. I think Beans is a quality game attack, to be honest, but, you know, people are going to hate on it. John obviously always gets thrown the dagger on these. Simp as well on the worst ends. It ain't looking good as well, and there was a lot of talk about this, to be fair. Simp used to be called Simplicity, but as he says, like, that's the only name I could really change to, but people don't say Simplicity, they're going to just say Simp to call out. In terms of best gamer tags, I really like some of the OG ones like Stainville and like Assassin, stuff like that. Just absolutely fantastic. And even like Nameless, I think is pretty fire as well. But very much enjoyed to your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.